Fog machine. It should be there. You just hit the button, James.
Somebody tell me where our hosts are?
Yeah.
What?
I felt scared that you could hear me chewing.
I heard like a hum.
White on set.
Alright, let's get this done.
Roll camera. Roll sound.
Season 1, Episode 6, Marker.
And action. Welcome to All the Hats, a podcast about filmmaking and industry. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to a brand new episode of All the Hats, a podcast about filmmaking and industry. As always, my name is Eric with a K.
And I'm James Gary.
Today we have with us Professor Douglas Miller. He is a professor at Liberty University in the Cinematic Arts program. He will be joining us to discuss cinematography.
This podcast is about jobs on a film set, like in general, like all the jobs. What jobs have you done? And like after that, what is the particular job that you want to talk about?
I worked my way up through the grip, electric, and camera department. So I've been pretty much every position in those departments on various levels of films. I've been an electric, I've been a best boy, I've been a gaffer, I've been a key grip, I've been a best boy, I've been a dolly grip, I've been a grip, I've been second AC, first AC, camera operator, and that all worked towards being a director of photography. But I've also, on documentary shoots and small crews, I've been a boom operator, I've been a mixer, recordist person, so pretty much all the technical stuff. I've also directed. I've produced some things. I'm not good at producing. I'm much better at the other things. I've directed. Probably haven't I've done a little bit of first AC work, or not first AC, first AD work, but that's probably the one area, more the area that I haven't done a whole lot of work in. So mostly in the technical equipment side of things is really where I've been. And I probably spent most of my time in the lighting end of things. So the position I probably would feel most comfortable talking about is director of photography.
How do you think all those other things led you to director of photography?
It's an education. All the other positions that I've worked in have allowed me to understand how, as a director of photography, I need to interface and serve those other positions. I worked as a lighting director, lighting designer on a soap opera. We had two big Fisher booms, and they had to get in a position where they could get the actors in their lines. So I had to work out shadows, and I had to accommodate where they needed to be so that they could get close enough to get good audio, but yet not compromise the lighting that I was designing and putting together. Because I've held a boom and had headphones on and listened to the presence that you have when you're slightly off axis or whether you're on axis, I understand those issues. And so that helps me in the design part to think, okay, if I do this, where can the boom go? If I do this, where can the sound people, how can they do their job? I haven't done makeup, but I understand. I've spent enough time learning from good makeup artists, what they do, so that when I'm doing the lighting, when I'm doing camera work, I can talk to them, interface with them, make suggestions or requests that are intelligent. So, knowing all the positions on the set, knowing how everything is, it's all a puzzle. It's all interlocking puzzle pieces. And if one piece doesn't lock into the other piece, the whole thing can fall apart. So having worked in the jobs, allows me to see that and then do my job better.
So, as a director of photography, what kind of problems have you had that you had to like really work around, other than like boom?
Well, I did a film a few years ago, and I've worked on several films where we had animals. Anything from birds. I worked on an after-school special as a key grip, and we had a wild bird kind of animal on it. I've worked on a number of shows with horses, and you've got to take special precautions or have an understanding when you're working around a horse or working around a wild animal, or an animal that's trained but is an animal. They don't understand. You can't explain things to them, so you've got to be cautious, and you've got to show them the equipment so that they don't get surprised. You've got to kind of understand what's going to make it happen. Now, this is going to sound maybe odd, but that made me more aware of actors and making sure that the actors understand what you're doing and how you're doing it, and you don't surprise them. And an actor, I tell my students this, the most fragile, perishable thing on a set is the performance of the actor. So making sure that they're comfortable, that they're not surprised by something, that they may look great, but if they're squinting and can't open their eyes because you've got a shiny board smacking them in the face, you don't get a good performance, and the whole thing sucks. There's stuff. One of the things that I see happening, and I think is part of this conversation, it's not just me making great pictures as a director of photography, but it's all of us making a great film. And sometimes my pictures have to be compromised to get the overall great film. The little lady in Des Moines wants pretty pictures, but not sacrificing a performance.
Definitely. On this kind of goes off a little bit, but on the pretty picture part, can a picture look too good?
Oh yeah, if it doesn't tell the story. It could be a gorgeous picture. There's an actual story that I tell my students. I was working on a film that ended up on PBS and airing all over the place, and we shot the scene, and we shot this one scene, and it was golden hour, and the main actress takes this sieve and puts it into a pond and lifts it up, and I set it up where the sunlight, golden sunlight, was coming down, and the water comes out of the bottom of the sieve, and it backlights the water. It was gorgeous. And a little while later, the director came up to me and said, "Hey, you know that shot that we did?" And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Well, I can't use it." And I'm like, "Why?" He goes, "It was too pretty. The emotion of the scene was cold and rejection, and that shot was warm and gorgeous. So it was too pretty, and it didn't tell the story. So it ended up on the cutting room floor." One of the things that people, one of the difficulties with being a director of photography is the actual job varies based on who the director is. You're executing the director's vision. And there are some directors that I work with who don't know anything about the technical thing, don't know, one shot over another shot. They're really acting, they're actors, directors, or they're writers. And so my interfacing with them and working with them, pretty much everything that has to do with the picture is mine. Then I work with directors that are trained up in film schools, and they don't really work well with the actors, but they think they know everything about the shots. And so you've got to work with them differently. What's really hard is when you work with somebody who thinks they know all about the camera and the shots and the lighting, and they don't. And they don't. they ask you to do things that are just physically impossible. There's a certain amount of physics that goes into optics and light and electricity, and there's things that it just won't do. And when someone doesn't understand the limitations of the system or limitations of just plain physics, light doesn't bend. It doesn't go around corners. It goes in a straight line. That's what happens. When people don't understand that, it sometimes causes issues and difficulties. And you've got to, a long time ago, a friend of mine taught me generally not to say no. There are times when you need to say no, but not to say no, but instead say, it's going to cost this much time and this much money. And then let the director and the producer decide if they want to spend the time and the money to accomplish what they're asking for. You've got to be careful when you say no, but there are times when you should say no.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's the best way? So, Eric, the director, we're going to eventually get a DP. And he's going to have to sit down and we're going to have to discuss shots and like lighting and camera angles that we want to get and all of that business. I guess I'm pushed out of that in a way because I'm not the director. So I kind of do want at least some say so, but I also don't want to take his job, either one of their jobs. But I do kind of want to like have some say so, at least in the beginning. Mm-hmm. And then if that gets on the cutting floor through the process, then that's fine. Mm-hmm. But at least be able to give some input because I feel like I'm a part of the overall plan.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So what is the best way to go about sitting down in a room and getting that, like what we want pre-pro wise done?
I think the way to start, obviously, you want someone to be the director of photography, not just because it's a job, but because they share the vision. And so understanding the vision is important. They need to read the script. They need to understand the story. And you need to talk in big terms to begin with. Not specific, let's do this move, but more in terms of what's the heart of the story? What's the theme? What's going on? Whose story is it? Whose point of view is it? You need to talk about that so everybody's on the same page. My suggestion to you is don't think about yourself in terms of the final job you're going to do, but think of yourself at this point in terms of you're one of the producers. You're a creative producer, so you're in that conversation about what's the goal, what's the target, what is this thing going to look like when it's done. Anybody can shoot an arrow and say they hit a target. It's different when you say this is the target, this is the parameters, and then you're a professional. You're saying this is what it's going to look like, and then you go out and do it, and that's what it looks like. You hit the target. So, you got to sit down and first describe what's the target. One of the first things I like to do is look at what's the inspiration for the director. What other movies are they looking at? What are they trying to do? I've worked with a number of directors through the years that we would spend a lot of time and talk about this film or that film, and it's this aspect of that, and it's this aspect of that. I worked with a production company for a long time. We did a lot of commercials together, and one of the things we would do the day before, in pre-production, the days before we shot, we would look through either the creative handbook, or we'd look through any kind of group of pictures, and the director would have taken Post-its and put it on all these different pictures. And then we'd go through and he'd go, I like this composition, I like this lighting, I like this color, this is the color palette, and we'd go through everything so that before we shot, we would both be on the same page and we would know what the target area really is. So, sitting down and screen is common. Directors and directors of photography sit down and screen films together. And they talk about this scene in this movie is like the scene we're going to shoot. This is the tone. This is the feeling. This scene or this film has the same kind of editing style or the same. So the editing style will affect the way we shoot. So, you're basically defining the target. And I've sat down with directors and listened to music, listened to jazz, listened to rock and roll, listened to folk music. And this is the tone, this is the feeling of what we're trying to accomplish. And from that, come out with a visual palette. So I think there's a lot of different layers that needs to happen, is needful in the pre-production time period to get the director, creatively get the director of photography, the director, the creative producers, all in agreement and understanding. You come into a project, nothing is worse than coming into a project and having the major creative forces thinking they understand each other, but not.
Just like...
And that, passing. Because then what happens is on set, when decisions are made and things are being committed to, people go, no, I don't want pink, I want purple. We talked about purple. But you never really talked about purple because, but everybody thinks you either talked about pink or you talked about purple. But, I don't see that character in a sloppy T-shirt. It should be a fitted French tailored shirt, and that's obviously that's a production design issue, but that there's a whole lot of difference in feel in terms of the way you would shoot it, in terms of the way you would light it. If the character was very buttoned up and very neat versus, wearing an old football jersey that had paint on it,
it's a different character.
It's a different feel, and so having that done in pre-production is essential so that the decisions that you make during production can be effective, efficient, and you can end up with the footage that you need to go into post with.
I kind of talked about this with Walls, but we plan on doing like some, is it Aronofsky or something? Mm-hmm. He did a Requiem for a Dream, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so Darren Aronofsky. Yeah. He did Requiem for a Dream, and there's like these quick cuts, right? Mm-hmm. Where they're doing drugs, which isn't what we're doing. But we kind of want to do that as like to show that the characters does the same thing every day,
right.
Like
repetition.
That, like he's very particular in things he does, and then there will be points to where he's broken out of that by an event that's throws that,
it disrupts it.
Yeah, and we're probably going to use it more towards the beginning, kind of like slow it down towards the end, because there'll be more and more disruption happening to his day. And James was saying it would be really hard to do because it's very specific, and people work really, especially on the sound side, people work their whole life to like try to master things like that. But what do you think? Like, what's the best way, film-wise, to accomplish something like that?
Obviously, I want to hear a little bit more about what you're thinking, and maybe find some examples of where people have done something similar to that. Emotionally, film is an emotional art form. It's an emotional language. It communicates on an emotional level very, very efficiently, very strongly. So what's the emotion in the beginning of the film?
It's probably going to be sort of bland, because he has a sort of bland.
Yeah, but if you're cutting fast, it's almost a frustrated, frantic kind of feel to it. Yeah. Even though it's bland,
it's a repetitive... So the things we're planning, we haven't decided exactly what we're cutting through. I think we have some things written down, like the fact that he uses like a reusable toothbrush, non-reusable toothbrush.
Is he?
Throws it away every time.
Every time.
And, like, it's a very clean. He washes his hands
Yeah.
over and over and over again.
So he's obsessive compulsive.
Yeah.
And so there's a couple, like, I don't know why I'm thinking about it, but I'd have to go back and look, I guess. The film Stranger Than Fiction, there's an interesting opening sequence in that where, Will Ferrell is doing daily kind of routine kinds of things. Locking the camera down and having the same frame, and then showing in some other way, showing transitions, like he's wearing a different, maybe he's wearing the same white t-shirt, but he's wearing different pajama bottoms. It's a different toothbrush because he's throwing it away, and cutting through the same frame. Maybe you've got 4, this is just ideas off the top of my head, but you've got maybe 4 different frames. One shooting across the sink at his midsection. He washes an ECU of his mouth and the toothbrush moving. Then down at the level of the trash can, he puts his foot on the trash can, the lid opens up, he drops the toothbrush into the trash can, it drops down. So you've got boom, 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 beat.
Because, we want the sounds to kind of bring a rhythm too.
Yeah. So you've got, and you're doing that. Beep, boom,
Yeah.
And so you boom, 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 and you're cutting from that same exact lockdown camera position, boom, 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 and then you break it. And one of the things, if you...
And then the phone rings and he's out of it.
And he's out of it, disrupts him. And so that rhythm, is happening pretty frantically, and then you're out of it. One of the things that I tell students, you don't want to move the camera every shot. You don't want to Dutch tilt every shot. You don't want to, these are punctuation marks. And so what you want to do, you establish the rhythm and then you break it. You put this shot, 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 then you break it. So you think through how you're juxtaposing shots, you're building a rhythm, you get them moving, and then you break it. And sometimes, like, if you
you have an expectation.
You have an expectation and it doesn't come. So, you're making a statement by building a pattern and then breaking the pattern. If in light, if I'm using light, if I wash the entire room and I sit in a blue, cold kind of look, if I do it for too long, I'm going to have viewer optical fatigue. So I need a little bit of warmth in the frame, or I need to cut to something that's warm in order to give my viewers a relief, a moment. So as a colorist, I would put in, I would have some color contrast. I would have the cold, but then I'd have a little bit of warmth somewhere in the scene. Blue and a little bit of amber, blue-green and a little bit of magenta. So you're doing some contrast with it. The same thing happens when you're talking about motion or movement. If it's constant movement, if it's constantly blue, you have fatigue on the viewer, and they end up taking some of that blue or that green out of it, and it doesn't have as much impact. That's why you put in some amber into it. So the same thing would happen with camera movement. The same thing would happen with cutting. The same thing would happen with duration of the shots. You've got to think about the progression and the build and how these things are going to kind of work together as a whole, and not do so much that you're fatiguing the audience and you lose them. There's a great shot or scene in Killing Fields, a really old film, but there's a great scene. It's this beautiful sunset, and the main characters, the actors, are in silhouette with this beautiful sunset going on in the background. Well, if you sit on a silhouette for too long, you end up frustrating the audience because a silhouette deprives the audience of information. They want to see the actors' faces. They can't see it in the silhouette. What makes this scene brilliant is the fact that the main character doesn't speak Cambodian. His translator is talking, and they're trying to get upriver, and he's talking to a military guy, and they're telling him no. So the main character and the translator, who you become, you're related to, those are your people, they're frustrated. So the end product is the audience is frustrated, the main characters are frustrated, and it works to tell the story really well. That's when film works. When the audience is emotionally moved in the direction the story needs them to be moved in.
Yeah, I really like what is the movie? Basically, like, all emotion has been taken out of the world, and like they're burning like pictures and films and stuff.
Fahrenheit 451?
No, it's like post-apocalyptic sort of. It's like a not post-apocalyptic. Where there's like this new government and it's controlling everyone.
Huh.
I guess that sort of has a post-apocalypticness to it. But they're burning pictures, and there's like these, I think they call them clerics or something, and it came after Matrix, right after Matrix, and it's similar to Matrix in a way.
Yeah.
And basically, the point I was trying to get to is there's, in the very beginning, the guy who plays Batman, I'm terrible at remember actors' names and stuff.
I'm horrible too.
The guy who plays Batman in the newer Batman movies, not the ones now, but the ones that everybody loves. He busts through it. He runs and busts through a door. The door slams down. He kind of slides in, and then everything goes black. And you're like sitting in darkness for, it feels like a long time. But that, like, I remember hearing like an interview about like the choice to have everything go black for what feels like forever, and then you start hearing like a little movement and stuff, and all of a sudden all you see is like flashes of gunfire, like, and he's like just shooting all different directions, taking out like the bad guys, basically the bad guys who are actually the good guys, the ones who are trying to keep the art stuff.
Gotcha.
Basically. So you're following the bad guy.
Yeah.
That slowly turns to the good side.
Gotcha.
I can't remember what it's called.
I can see it.
But yeah, but that's a bold choice too.
Yeah. But that's, it's about telling, one of the things that people, I think, a big mistake that people make is losing sight of where is the audience and how, where is the audience and how do they emotionally travel through this journey? At the end of the day, it's the audience that really matters.
And not other filmmakers. I posted something on Facebook about that, and then a lot of filmmakers got mad at me. Like a lot of our, the people I went to school here with and
Why?
everywhere. Because I said, like, I don't believe that like other filmmakers' opinions on movies matter as much. I didn't say they didn't matter at all.
Yeah.
I said they didn't matter as much as the average moviegoer.
Well, yeah.
Because there's not that many filmmakers.
No, I think the idea of I think the idea of who it is that makes who is it that pays your check at the end of the day. Who is it, who are you talking to? I don't think, on one level, they're not idiots, they're human beings, and they're smart, and they've gone to a lot of movies. And so they're going to compare your film to the closest thing that they've seen that's close to your film. So you have to be good. But you can't be so esoteric that they can't connect with it. And what kind of film is it? Who are the people that are going to go see that film? That's who you're talking to. And so use a vocabulary that they can relate to and connect to. So I don't think, we don't make films for other filmmakers generally. If we do,
There might be some Oscar bait type stuff that are.
well, I'm really cynical about the Oscars. I really, I think the Oscars are more about politics and more about, I think it's more about that than it is about making great movies. How many great movies didn't win Oscars and didn't get, known until 10 years after the films came out? There's a bunch of them. And do you go out to make an Oscar? It's kind of like the idea of viral. I remember years ago when things would go viral, and everybody's, we're going to make a viral. Well, viral is a verb. You don't make a viral. A video goes viral. I think you set out to make a great movie, and you set out to speak to an audience. I don't think you go out to win an Oscar. If the Oscar happens, great. Mind you, I don't have an Oscar, so maybe that's why. But I don't think that's the point. I think the point is to make a great movie. And if you make a great movie and you attract the attention of the Oscars, then great. But making a great movie, getting it out in front of an audience, and building an audience, sharing with an audience, having an audience, that's success. Having an Oscar is icing on top of the cake. If all you got is the icing and you don't have any cake, that's stupid.
Yeah. You need the whole thing.
You need the whole thing. And put it in the right order.
Yeah. You have to...
Christian Bale?
Christian Bale. Do you have any final... I think I got enough. Do you have any final things to say?
Film is an art that's a business. And I think that needs to be in the right order. And all the pieces have to be there to work. And it's a collaborative art form. The most successful films have great teams that work together. Spielberg and Janusz Kaminski, Roger Deakins and the Coen brothers. It's a great team of people to put out a great film. And there has to be a serving. Christians, I don't know if you're going to talk about Christianity in this podcast at all.
We can.
One of the things about Christianity that I think is overlooked is Christ said that it's the greatest among you is the one who serves. And in order for everybody on the set to do their job, the director has to do his job. So the director is actually the greatest servant on the set. In the same way the director of photography he has to serve his keys, his key grip and his gaffer and his first AC. I was taught by a friend of mine who was first ACing for me that I wasn't doing my job well because I wasn't serving him the way I should be. He didn't say that, but basically because I wasn't organized and I was shooting from the hip, he couldn't do his job as well as he wanted to, and he was frustrated. And that taught me a lot about what I have to do in order for the people working with me, not necessarily do I use the word for me, but working with me, for them to do their job. That idea of serving one another, that's collaboration. It's not I get my way because I'm the king. It's more we work together and we serve the project. It's more serving the project than serving me.
Definitely. Done. I can see that. Thank you.
Thank you
for the...
My pleasure.
Oh, what a great interview.
It was a good interview. As always, I think all of our interviewees are relatively interesting, if I do say so.
We pick them ourselves.
If we I'll tell you what, it's always interesting to hear our professors after being out of school for a couple of years, because it's just a refresher, like a reminder of like, brings back memories, you know? So we talked about a few things, and the first thing I want to bring up, which is just weird because you didn't mention it during the interview, and yet we have two professors from the same school who both seem to mention cake during their interviews.
They like cake?
They must like cake. It must be, I don't know what it is. It's weird though. I was like, what?
He had a few like interesting like little, I don't know how you say it, like ways of showing people what, like how things work. I don't know, like as when he tapped the desk and like you're expecting him to tap it more in a certain rhythm.
Yeah.
And then he just does something different, you know, kind of like breaking expectations and stuff like that.
Well, it's very similar to, in regards to those expectations, it's kind of like Game of Thrones. And there was I think it was the Battle of the Battle of the Bastards, if I'm not mistaken. Forgive me, I don't watch Game of Thrones. So for those of you who want to start sending emails about that, that's fine. But
I watch Game of Thrones.
Yeah,
Why are you talking about it then?
Because I happen to watch videos regarding the cinematic aspects of the show, and the story aspects. So there is a scene where, I don't know their names, but the one guy is trying to kill the kid with a bow and arrow, and he misses the first time, misses the second time. You expect him to hit him the third time, but he misses the third time, and you think he's going to get away, only to fire a fourth one and hit him exactly where he was planning on hitting him the whole time. And so it's almost to build this suspense.
But do you think he missed on purpose?
Yes.
He did.
Yes.
He absolutely missed on purpose.
And I didn't have to watch the entire episode to realize he missed on purpose, because it's just, you know, but it builds that suspense. It's changing the rhythm of what you would typically suspect. And we usually suspect things to happen in groups of three. And I've heard that, like in school, that was one of the main things that was always taught to us, is if you're going to show something that's important to the story, show it at least 3 times.
Yeah.
So that the viewer will then get it in their head, like, okay, this is a thing. This is important.
This is what's happening.
Yeah. And so much like the Battle of the Bastards, there's your interruption. You get the first 3, you think, oh, great, it missed, we're all good and safe. And then the fourth one can possibly break your spirits even more, because now it's all been taken from you.
Yeah, spoilers, by the way.
Look, if you haven't watched Game of Thrones by now, I don't care. Like, it doesn't matter. That's your fault.
You haven't watched Game of Thrones.
It's because I don't like it. I just don't like it.
You don't know because you haven't seen it.
I've seen 4 episodes and I just can't do it. I
think
just
that's
don't
enough?
like it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Were they somewhere in the middle or from the beginning?
They're more towards the middle. I'll tell you what the issue is. It's the sexual scenes. I don't like sex scenes.
Yeah.
I can't stand it. So it's all trash to me.
Yeah.
So I throw it out. But,
nice.
Yeah, that's the only
Do we
reason.
want to talk about that on the podcast?
Yeah, why not?
All right. But we probably should do that in another episode, not this one. Well, it was great having you guys in my living room, and Eric's living room. And we'll talk to you next week. And cut.
Good.
Cut. All right. So we'll go ahead and talk it.
That was simple. Same thing.
Second team in.
Feel free to email us at allthehatspod@gmail.com.
And if you would like to check out our schedule or any other information about us, we are on facebook.com/allthehats.
And of course, be sure to stream us wherever you stream podcasts.